Let's talk religion. My most dreaded topic on YouTube. I want to talk about this for my kids because at some point they're gonna have to figure this kind of stuff out for themselves. And I have no interest in sparking a debate or having people criticize what I say, my opinions, my thoughts, blah blah blah. I don't like talking about politics. I don't like talking about religion because everyone thinks they're right. Everyone thinks the other person is horribly wrong, and I don't like contention. I don't like fighting. I don't like negativity. But I also can't avoid this topic that is going to be a major part of my children's lives. So, I've been thinking about this forever, and I'm like, I have to go there. For me, for them. So I'm going to go there. I'm going to talk about it. Okay. So why do I hate this so much? Because I don't want to tell people what to do. Also, because for a long time I did tell people what to do. And I realized that that's not what I want to do. That's not how I want to live my life. And I changed. Camera's tipping. Okay. But starting off, both of my parents were born into different religions, different churches, and each of their families converted to Mormonism, or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, when my mom was a child and when my dad was an adult. He had graduated college when his family joined the church, and then he did after them. My mom's family joined when she was little, and then so she basically grew up in it. And then my siblings and I grew up in Mormonism, in the LDS church, because that's what we were born into. And basically when I was a younger kid, I had a hard time with what I saw at church. It bothered me that people were kind of two-faced. They'd be one way at church and they'd be another way outside of church. It bugged me how people didn't really seem very real. And this is totally, I'm being judgmental because this is how I felt as a child. I don't feel this way necessarily right now, but I am telling my story. So I felt like people were a bit hypocritical, not very realistic, kind of more about appearances and looking like they were good people. And when I was about 11, I had a dream that my mom died, and I woke up crying, and I was like, I might have been 10 or 11. I was living in Colorado at that time, and I woke up crying, and I went to my mom and was like, Mom, I had a bad dream. I dreamt that you died. And she just laughed, and she said, God's not gonna let me die. He knows that you need me too much. And I was like, wow. She thinks that God cares about that? She doesn't know that God lets people's parents die? In my mind, I was like, well, that's delusional, I obviously didn't know that word, but I just really felt like that was just like a fairy tale. That's something you say to make people feel better. Don't worry, God won't do that. But I knew that God let that kind of stuff happen. And so around 10 or 11 is when I started being very critical. Oh, you think that God won't let you die, but I've seen that God does let parents die. And that was the first time that I remember being critical and being like, wow, well then maybe there is no God. And over the next few years, as I was a teenager, my parents had more kids. They had a kid when I was 12, 14, and 17 years old. And during that time, they were pretty abusive, physically and emotionally. And also spiritually, not necessarily spiritually, but churchly. If we were late to church, my dad would make us sit on the couch for, I don't even know how long, just as a punishment. You had to sit on the couch after church if you're late. If you're 1 minute late, you have to sit on the church for however long. And it was just something that was like so controlling in my life, and I hated it. And I also saw how my parents were very, what is the word? Say one thing, do another, hypocritical. And they would just seriously treat us very poorly at home. And then at church, seemed like things were all fine and nobody would believe what they did behind closed doors. And so I saw that in my own family, but I also saw it in other people, not necessarily like abuse, but I saw other people like outside of church, they'd be one way, inside of church, they'd be another way, or around people, they'd be one way, alone, they'd be another way. And it's not like that bothers me now as an adult. I'm just like, well, everyone's fake, I don't care. But when I was a kid growing up, that had a really big impact on me believing in God and believing in religion or Christianity or Mormonism, any of those things. So I was very critical. I started to not believe from 10 or 11 on, and it just kind of grew a little bit more like, yeah, I don't think I do. Like, I don't know, maybe, like, I don't know what I believe. And when I graduated high school and I was looking to apply to colleges, my dad had one request, and he has never really given me a lot of advice, not really done too much parenting, but he did ask me to apply to Brigham Young University, which is a private school owned by the LDS Church, the Mormons. It is located in Provo, Utah, in Rexburg, Idaho, and in some part of Hawaii. Sorry, I don't know where. I think Honolulu, but I don't really know my Hawaii very well. But anyway, he asked me to apply to BYU because he said he missed that opportunity because he'd never found out about the church until after he had graduated college. And he wished if he could go back that he could go to that school. And I wasn't interested in that school. Like, it's kind of a little harder to get into, and I didn't think my grades were quite good enough. And I also didn't want, like, I didn't want to be rejected. I didn't want to be told no, I didn't get in, so I'd rather just not apply. But he asked me a few times, like, I would really like it if you'd apply. I'd really like it. And I was like, fine. And so I applied to Brigham Young University. And I applied to Idaho and Utah, and I got into both. And I didn't know if I was going to get into either one, but the one that I chose to go to was Utah in Provo. And I absolutely loved it. It changed my life. So that is the one thing I'm most grateful to my father for doing, is asking me, persuading me to apply to BYU, because that kind of changed my life and set me on a good course from then on out. So I went to college, not really believing in God, not really going to church a lot. Like, I met a lot of people my age who did believe in God, and that was new. And I had a lot of good experiences in that way. I could ask questions to my peers because it's a religious school, and so everybody kind of goes there, you know, trying to be a good person and committing to live by a certain set of standards and rules known as the honor code. And pretty much everyone goes to church and just lives like an upstanding life. There's no alcohol, no premarital sex allowed during your time at Brigham Young University. And everyone just, I don't know, it's kind of like this little bubble is what they refer to it as, like a bubble of just everyone's the same and everyone's like just a goody goody, I guess. I don't know. I don't like want to make it seem so simple, but after a couple years at BYU, after having some really good friends and dating some guys that were strong believing Mormons, I decided to go on a mission. And at that time, boys could go on a mission at 19 years old for 2 years, and girls could go on a mission at 21 years old for a year and a half. Now they've lowered the ages to 18 for boys and 19 for girls. Why they're not the same, I still don't know, but that's how it is. And girls go for less time than boys. So when I was 20, almost 21, I decided to go. I was dating a boy. He's like, would you like to get married? Like, do you want to talk about the M word, is what he called it. And I was like, what's the M word? And he's like, marriage. And I was like, no, I don't want to talk about marriage. I'm 20, I'm not even 21. And I told him, like, I don't want to get married because I don't know anything, and I can't teach my kids if I don't know anything. And I said, I'm going to go on a mission, and if you're here when I get back, that's great. And he said, no, get married to me now, and just blah, 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 and who cares? I was 20, and it was my first serious boyfriend. So I turned him down, went on a mission a couple months later, and I spent the first year of my mission kind of like just trying to figure things out. I thought if I went behind the scenes and discovered what there was about Mormonism, that I would find my answers. Like I would first of all determine if there was a God, and also determine if Mormonism is true. And I just spent my first year studying everything I could. And I memorized dozens and dozens of scriptures in the Bible and in the Book of Mormon and in the Doctrine and Covenants, which are scriptures for the LDS Church. And I lived my life on my mission as a representative for the church. So even though I didn't know what was true, I didn't know if I believed it, I lived my life as if I was speaking for the church. And that helped me to be able to be confident in what I was saying, because I'm like, it doesn't matter, it's not for me, it's not like my personal choice, it's just what somebody in the church would say or would think or would believe, I guess, if that makes any sense. And that was just a personal decision of mine. And about a year in of intense study, I read everything. Like I still read a ton now about everything, but on my mission is when I really learned how to study and read and learn. And I loved the Bible. I'd never read the Bible like straight through before. I loved, well, I should say the New Testament. The Old Testament I thought was a little bit weird, but the New Testament I thought was just great. I felt really good reading it. I loved it. Like there were some things that I was like, I don't know about this, but overall the general feeling was good and I liked it, and there were good pieces of truth in the New Testament. And actually that is where I was reading it in English and Spanish, trying to learn the language while studying the scriptures. And that's when I decided that I loved the name Mateo, which means Matthew in English, which is the first book of the New Testament. And I decided that I wanted to name one of my children Mateo. And I did. I named one of my twins that died. His name was Mateo. And that was something that I had thought of since my mission when I was 21. I left in 2007 and I got home in 2009. So that was something that almost 10 years later I did end up having a son named Mateo, because I gained a belief in God on my mission. About a year in, like I was saying, a year in of study, one day I was studying and I was just reading something that someone had said in the church. They had said about Jesus, and it said that Jesus was the Son of God. And I got this really strong feeling like, yeah, that's true. Like, not only had I read hundreds and hundreds of other talks or speeches and other scriptures and books and everything, but not only did I read it, but I knew, like I believed it and I felt it, and it just felt right. It felt good. It felt true. And so I gained that belief in God. And for that entire year, I had been asking, like, is Mormonism true? Is Joseph Smith like really a prophet? Is the current president of the church a prophet of God? Are the scriptures true? Is there a God? Is the Bible true? Is the Book of Mormon true? Like, I had questions about all of those things. And I've always been pretty open-minded, I think. I've always been like quick to say I don't know as far as religion or anything else goes, and I never want to take anyone down my path. Especially, well, on my mission I did. I was like, this is Mormonism, would you like it? But other than that, like, I don't, especially with the not knowing part, I don't want to pull anyone to be like, I don't want to make anyone doubt, or to come to my side of like, ooh, is this true? Is this not? I keep most of what I learn to myself. And this video is different because it's for my kids. I want them to know. But overall, it was for me to know, to have a clear conscience, and to find out what I believed and what I wanted to use to guide my life in spirituality. So a year in, I got that confirmation or feeling or belief in God and in Jesus Christ. So I knew I was Christian. And I kept going for the next 6 months trying to figure out the other things, like, well, what about the other things? Is Joseph Smith a prophet? And in the LDS Church, they kind of tell you that one thing topples another, like it's a domino. If you know this, then you know this. If you know this, then you know this. And it kind of just, they all correlate. But for me, that didn't just do it. I didn't want to just like on my mission, I did act like, okay, I'm going to teach what I know, and I know a lot because I studied a lot. But I wasn't willing to just say, okay, I'll accept it just because I believe this other thing. So for me, I wanted to know each thing individually. Like if I believed in God, that didn't automatically tell me that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. And just because I know Jesus is the Christ doesn't mean I believe in Joseph Smith. And because I know Joseph Smith doesn't mean I believe in the Book of Mormon. So those were individual topics I wanted to find out for myself. And the Jesus and God one, I feel like I got that answer at the same time, and that was great, because my answer, what I felt was true, was Jesus Christ is the Son of God. So that told me that there's Jesus and there's God. So then I was like, okay, that's Christianity, I believe in that. And I had been, before this time, really critical of the scriptures, because I thought that was something that people put together to control other people. Like, whenever the scriptures were put together, I had the feeling like, well, I think that they put them together to get people to do what they want and to control them and to just have another way of manipulating people. And to an extent, I kind of still believe that. Like, I still think that there are some things that were put together in the Bible to just kind of be like, well, this is it. You got to do what I say because this is what's right and you have to do it. Like, I can't really explain it right now in this video. I'd have to think of how to explain that better, but I still kind of think there's a little bit of that in there. But I also believe that Jesus is the Son of God. So I also believe that there is a lot of good in the Bible. And I do think that there is still some stuff. Like, I've been reading lately about Matthew and how he kind of twisted some stuff to make it fit prophecies of the Old Testament. And I'm like, I don't know if he was just exaggerating. Like, even on the birth of Christ, I've been reading about that, and I'm just like, I think that he kind of exaggerated to make his point, like to get people to believe Christianity. He was trying to convince the Jews. And I think because of that, he kind of was just like, well, this, like, artistic license, basically. So anyway, that's a tangent, but so back to me graduated my mission. Just kidding. I finished my mission, went home. Then I got a job teaching at the Missionary Training Center in Provo, which is where when you go on a mission, you go to a training course. I think it was 13 weeks or something like that. 13, 12? I don't remember. That doesn't sound right. That sounds like a long time, but I guess it could have been. Let's see. I entered the MTC August 1st, and I think I went on my mission the middle of October, so I guess it could have been. Yeah. And that's if you're learning a foreign language. If you're not learning a language, I think it was something like 6 weeks or something. I don't even remember. It's been so long. I worked there from December of 2009 until January of 2012. So all of 2010, all of 2011, and then beginning of January 2012 is when I went home. I had one class left to finish, and this is a tangent as well, but that's when I quit my job, moved home for a little bit, and then I moved to Arizona. Anyway, 2 years and a little bit of working at the MTC. First of all, I taught Spanish to some mission presidents, which are the guys in charge of the missions, and their wives, and senior missionaries, which are old people that go on missions, and also one leader in the church's wife who was trying to learn English because she was a native Spanish speaker living in Utah. And I went to her home and taught her English. But then when I was tired of teaching older people, I was like, I want to teach younger people. Then I got hired also teaching younger people at the MTC. So I switched from the senior MTC to the regular MTC, and then I got districts of 19 to 21-year-olds that were going to different countries learning Spanish. And I was teaching advanced Spanish, which I loved because it was people who already had a little bit of Spanish knowledge, and I was just helping polish them up and teach them a little bit more grammar, and also teach them how to teach the gospel. And I really focused on teaching them how to have a relationship with God and how to teach people how to have a relationship with God, because that was something that I had developed on my mission, and it's something that I really valued. And so I wanted to teach them how to do that and how to invite others to come unto Christ and to have a relationship with him and with God, and to learn how to speak with God. So that was my focus as an MTC teacher. I loved it. That was the best career. It's not even really a career, but employment job that I've ever had. It was so rewarding, so fulfilling, and I was with good people. I was teaching, which I loved, and that made me think I wanted to become a teacher. And then I became a teacher outside of the MTC, and I was like, this is not even that great. But the MTC teaching was amazing. I loved teaching Spanish. I loved having discussions about how to be good people, how to do what's right, how to help others, and I loved it. And during this time, I was still very much in the I don't know phase, and the MTC just kind of fell into my lap. Wow, that was the loudest scream I think I've ever heard from Zoe. Maybe I'm talking too loud. Okay, she's quiet. Okay, what was I saying? MTC, I was very much in the I don't know stage of religion. Like, I knew about God and Jesus at this point, and that was great, and that really gave me a lot of momentum. But I still didn't know about Mormonism, the LDS Church, all those things I had mentioned before: prophets, priesthood, Joseph Smith, Book of Mormon, Doctrine and Covenants, and all that. I just had a basic belief in Christianity. No, Zoe. And during the time that I was a teacher for those 2 years, I also became a temple worker, which is somebody who goes to the LDS temple, which they look like big castles. Some of them are smaller, but they're like these fancy buildings where people go to learn more about, I don't even know if I want to say like the gospel, but teachings of the LDS Church. And I worked there for a full year, and while I was working there, they asked me to help new people who are going to the temple for the first time, which was really cool to get to meet and help and reassure people who had never gone before and were like really nervous and scared sometimes, or excited, or getting married. And so that was a really cool experience for me as well. So I was doing the temple work, I was doing the MTC, and I was going to BYU at the same time. So my life was really wrapped up in the LDS Church. Then I graduated. I feel like I backtracked. I got a little bit distracted with Zoe. So, graduated, left BYU, moved to Arizona, and got a career. Why do I keep saying that? Because I want a career. Okay, I got a job working in international marketing for a tennis company. So basically, they were selling tickets and tour packages to tennis tournaments around the world. And so I talked to people in Spanish, English, Portuguese, and even attempted French to sell these tickets and packages and help people with tennis stuff. Which wasn't that rewarding, because it was like people would drop $40,000 on a tennis match, and I was like, why would you ever do that? Like, that is such a waste of money. That's my opinion. So it wasn't too rewarding, but it was a great place for me to be right after college, out of the Provo Mormon bubble, and kind of figuring out what I wanted for my life. So when I would go to work, I would go to the gym during my lunch break, and sometimes also after work. So I felt really good physically. I was in